There are moments in history when heaven leans in closer to earth, when time itself feels like it is holding its breath, when something unseen begins to stir in the spiritual realm before it ever manifests in the natural. And I believe with everything in me that August 6th, 7th, and 8th are not ordinary days. These are not just dates on a calendar. These are moments of divine urgency. Moments where God is speaking clearly, loudly, and unmistakably to those who are willing to listen. And the message is simple, but it carries eternal weight. Do not ignore this warning. We are living in a generation that has grown comfortable with noise. We are surrounded by distractions, consumed by entertainment, overwhelmed by information, yet starving for truth. People scroll past warnings, laugh at conviction, and silence anything that challenges their comfort. But God does not whisper warnings for them to be ignored. When He speaks, it is not casual, it is intentional, it is precise, and it is always motivated by His desire to save, to prepare, and to awaken. These 3 days carry a spiritual significance that many will miss, not because the message is hidden, but because their hearts are hardened. There is a difference between hearing and listening. Many will hear the warning, but few will respond to it. And the tragedy of our time is not that God is silent, but that people have chosen not to respond. There is a shaking happening right now. You can feel it if you are spiritually awake. Nations are unstable. Truth is being distorted. Darkness is no longer hiding. It is boldly presenting itself as light. What was once considered wrong is now celebrated, and what was once considered righteous is now mocked. This is not accidental, this is not random, this is exactly what happens when a generation begins to drift away from God. And yet, in the middle of this chaos, God is still calling. He is still warning. He is still reaching out with mercy before judgment. Because judgment is never God's first response. Warning is. He always gives an opportunity to turn back. He always sends a message before a moment of consequence. August 6th, 7th, and 8th are a call to attention, a call to wake up, a call to examine your life, your heart, your priorities, because the reality is this: many people think they have time. They believe they can delay obedience. They assume they can get serious about God later. But later is not promised. Tomorrow is not guaranteed. And the danger of delay is that it slowly hardens your heart until the voice of God becomes just another background noise. There are people listening right now who know exactly what God has been telling them. You have felt conviction. You have sensed the need to change, to let go of certain habits, to walk away from certain compromises, but you have postponed it. You have justified it. You have convinced yourself that it is not urgent, but this is your wake-up call. This is your moment to realize that what God is saying cannot be ignored any longer, because ignoring a warning does not cancel the consequence. It only delays your response until it may be too late. And God, in His mercy, is giving you these days as a window of opportunity, a chance to realign, a chance to repent, a chance to return. We have seen throughout history that when God warns, it is always because something is approaching. It is never without reason. There is always a purpose behind it. And the people who take those warnings seriously are the ones who are prepared when the moment comes. Right now, there is a spiritual urgency that cannot be explained naturally. There is a weight in the atmosphere, a sense that something is shifting, something is nearing, something is about to unfold. And while the world continues as normal, eating, drinking, buying, selling, there is a divine interruption on the horizon. The question is not whether God is speaking, the question is whether you are listening, because God does not force His voice on anyone. He speaks and He waits for a response. He warns and He watches who will take it seriously. These 3 days are not about fear. They are about preparation. They are about alignment. They are about recognizing that your life is not meant to be lived casually when eternity is at stake. Too many people treat their spiritual lives as optional, as something secondary, as something they will focus on when it is convenient. But there is nothing convenient about eternity. There is a reason why this warning is so direct. There is a reason why it carries such urgency. It is because time is moving faster than people realize. Events are aligning in ways that were once thought impossible. The world is changing rapidly, and yet many are spiritually asleep. You cannot afford to be asleep in a time like this. You cannot afford to be distracted. You cannot afford to ignore what God is saying, because when the moment comes, it will not wait for those who are unprepared. This is not about predicting a specific event. This is about recognizing a spiritual condition. This is about understanding that God is calling His people to be ready at all times. Not occasionally, not when it feels right, but consistently. There is a call right now to return to a place of seriousness with God, to move away from lukewarm faith, to step out of compromise, to stop playing games with sin, because the days of casual Christianity are coming to an end. What is required now is commitment. What is required now is sincerity. What is required now is a heart that is fully surrendered. And for those who feel fear when they hear this, understand something clearly. This is not a message of condemnation. This is a message of mercy, because God only warns those He loves. He only calls out to those He desires to save. If He wanted to judge without warning, He could. But He doesn't. He speaks, He reaches, He calls, He gives opportunities again and again. And this moment, these 3 days, are one of those opportunities. You have to make a decision. Not tomorrow, not next week, but now. Will you ignore this warning, or will you respond to it? Will you continue living as if nothing is changing, or will you recognize that something significant is happening? Because there are consequences to both choices. Ignoring leads to regret. Responding leads to transformation. Ignoring leads to distance. Responding leads to restoration. There are people who will look back on these days and wish they had taken them seriously. And there are those who will look back and be grateful that they did. The difference will not be in what was said, but in how they responded. Do not be among those who hear and walk away unchanged. Do not be among those who feel conviction and silence it. Do not be among those who delay until it is too late. Instead, be among those who listen, those who respond, those who take action, because this is your moment. This is your opportunity. This is your warning. God is not silent. He is speaking clearly, and the message is urgent. Do not ignore this warning. Let this be the moment where everything changes for you. Let this be the moment where you stop running, stop delaying, stop compromising, and start responding. Because the greatest tragedy is not that God didn't speak, but that people chose not to listen. And you have heard it now. The question is, what will you do with it? There is a reason why the Spirit is pressing so strongly right now. It is because the window of indifference is closing. For too long, people have treated the voice of God as optional, as something they can tune in and out of depending on their mood. But there comes a point where that option is no longer available. There comes a point where what was once a gentle call becomes a firm warning. You can sense it in your spirit if you're honest. There is a discomfort that cannot be explained away. There is a conviction that keeps returning no matter how much you try to ignore it. That is not coincidence. That is not emotion. That is God reaching out to you again, refusing to let you drift further without resistance. Because drifting is dangerous. It does not feel dramatic at first. It is subtle. It is gradual. It is quiet. One compromise here, one delay there, one excuse after another. And before you realize it, you are far from where you once stood. You still remember truth, but you are no longer living in it. You still recognize conviction, but you have learned to silence it. And this is exactly why this warning matters. Because God is not just addressing actions, He is addressing direction. He is calling you to examine not just what you are doing, but where you are heading. Because direction determines destination, and many are heading toward a place they never intended to reach. These days are not random markers, they are checkpoints. Moments where heaven is asking you to stop and evaluate. To ask yourself honestly, am I aligned with God, or have I slowly adjusted to the world around me? Am I standing firm in truth, or have I started bending to what is easier, more comfortable, more accepted? The pressure to conform is stronger now than ever before. The world is not neutral. It is actively pulling people away from truth. And if you are not intentional, you will be shaped by it without even realizing it. That is why staying spiritually awake is no longer optional. It is necessary. There are voices everywhere telling you what to believe, how to live, what to accept. But not all voices carry truth. Not all voices lead to life. And if you are not grounded, you will begin to accept things that once would have troubled your spirit. You will begin to normalize what should never be normal. This is how deception works. It does not come suddenly, it comes gradually. It introduces small changes that seem harmless until they become habits. And those habits shape your thinking, and your thinking shapes your life. But God's warning cuts through all of that. It exposes what has been hidden. It reveals what has been ignored. It confronts what has been tolerated. Not to shame you, but to bring you back before it is too late. Because there is still time right now. That is the message within the warning. There is still an opportunity to turn around. There is still a chance to realign. But that window will not remain open forever. You cannot keep pushing this aside. You cannot keep telling yourself that you will deal with it later. Because later has a way of becoming never. And the longer you wait, the harder it becomes to respond. There are people who once felt exactly what you are feeling now. They once sensed the urgency, the conviction, the pull to change, but they ignored it long enough that it faded. Not because God stopped speaking, but because they stopped listening. And when that happens, the silence is not peace, it is distance. This is why this moment matters so much. Because you still hear it, you still feel it, you still recognize that something is not right, that something needs to change. And that awareness is a gift. It is evidence that God is still reaching you. Do not waste that. Do not take that lightly. These days are not about creating panic. They are about creating awareness. They are about bringing clarity in a time of confusion. They are about separating truth from deception, urgency from distraction, purpose from emptiness. There is a seriousness that God is calling His people into, a level of awareness that goes beyond routine and ritual, because routine can continue even when the heart is distant. A ritual can be performed even when there is no real connection. But God is not looking for routine. He is looking for response. He is looking for people who will not just hear, but act. People who will not just acknowledge truth, but live by it. And that requires something many are unwilling to give: surrender. Not partial surrender, not conditional surrender, but complete surrender. Letting go of control, letting go of excuses, letting go of anything that stands between you and full obedience. Because the reality is, you cannot hold on to both. You cannot hold on to your way and fully walk in God's way at the same time. There has to be a decision. There has to be a moment where you choose which direction you will follow. And this warning is leading you to that moment. You may not know exactly what is coming, but you can sense that something is approaching. And that awareness is not meant to paralyze you, it is meant to prepare you, because preparation changes everything. It determines whether you stand firm or fall apart when the moment arrives. Those who are prepared are not shaken in the same way as those who are not. They recognize what is happening. They understand the significance. They are not caught off guard. And that is what God wants for you. Not fear, not confusion, but readiness. But readiness does not happen by accident. It requires intention. It requires action. It requires a willingness to take this seriously, even when others around you do not. Because not everyone will understand this, not everyone will respond to it. Some will dismiss it, some will mock it, some will ignore it completely. But their response does not change the reality of the warning. You are responsible for your response. And right now, you are being given clarity. You are being given an opportunity to step out of distraction and into awareness, to move from passivity to action, to stop drifting and start standing, because the days ahead will reveal where people truly stand. Not by what they say, but by how they live. Not by what they claim to believe, but by what they actually follow. And what you choose now will shape how you stand. Then this is not about perfection. It is about direction. It is about choosing to move toward God instead of away from Him. It is about responding to His voice instead of silencing it. And that choice is being placed before you right now, in this moment, within this warning that you cannot afford to ignore. And as this urgency continues to press in, there is something deeper that must be understood. Warnings are not interruptions, they are invitations. They are invitations to step out of a path that leads to loss and step into a path that leads to life. But an invitation only has power if it is accepted. It changes nothing if it is ignored. Right now there is a dividing line forming, not one that can be seen with human eyes, but one that is very real in the spiritual realm. It is a separation between those who are awake and those who remain asleep, between those who take God seriously and those who continue treating Him as a distant idea rather than a present authority. And this separation is not based on words. It is not based on appearances, it is based on response. Because in moments like this, response reveals everything. It reveals what truly matters to you. It reveals where your priorities are. It reveals whether your faith is real or simply convenient. There are people who have built their lives on comfort, and anything that threatens that comfort is immediately rejected. But truth is not always comfortable. Conviction is not always easy. And transformation is never convenient. Yet all of these are necessary if you are going to stand firm in the days ahead, because what is coming will not be navigated by comfort. It will be navigated by conviction. It will require a foundation that is not shaken by pressure, not altered by fear, not influenced by the shifting opinions of the world. And that foundation is built in moments like this. Moments where you are challenged to choose truth over convenience, obedience over delay, awareness over distraction. There is also a personal aspect to this warning that cannot be overlooked. This is not just about global events or external changes. This is about your heart, your life, your relationship with God, because it is possible to be aware of everything happening around you and still ignore what is happening within you. You can recognize the signs, talk about the times, even warn others, and yet remain unchanged yourself. And that is one of the most dangerous places to be, being informed but not transformed. God is not just calling you to understand what is happening, He is calling you to respond to it personally, to let it affect the way you live, the way you think, the way you prioritize your life. Because awareness without action leads to regret. There are areas in your life that you already know need to change, things you have justified, delayed, or hidden. And this warning is shining a light on those areas, not to expose you to others, but to bring you into alignment with truth. You cannot carry those things forward and expect to stand strong. They will weigh you down. They will weaken your foundation. And when pressure comes, they will be the points where compromise begins. That is why this moment is so critical. It is not just about recognizing the warning. It is about removing what stands in the way of responding to it fully. There is also a call to seriousness that many have avoided. A realization that your life is not your own, that your time is not unlimited, that your choices have eternal consequences. This is not meant to create fear, but clarity, because clarity removes illusion. It forces you to see things as they truly are, and when you see clearly, you can no longer pretend that everything is fine when it is not. This is where many struggle, because responding to a warning means change. It means letting go of what is familiar. It means stepping into something that requires faith and commitment, and that is uncomfortable. But staying where you are carries a greater cost, because the longer you resist, the stronger that resistance becomes. The more you delay, the easier it becomes to continue delaying. And eventually, what once felt urgent begins to feel distant. That is why you must act while the urgency is still present, while your heart is still responsive, while you still feel the weight of what is being said. There is also a call to separation, not isolation from people, but separation from patterns, from influences, from anything that pulls you away from truth. Because you cannot move forward while holding on to things that are pulling you backward. And this requires honesty. honest evaluation of what is influencing you, what is shaping you, what is guiding your decisions, because not everything that feels normal is right. Not everything that is accepted is good. You have to be willing to go against the current, to stand in a way that may not be understood by others, to make decisions that are not based on popularity, but on truth. Because at the end of the day, it is not the approval of people that matters, it is your alignment with God. There is also a strengthening that happens when you respond. A clarity that begins to replace confusion. A peace that comes from knowing you are in the right place, even when everything around you feels uncertain. That is the difference between ignoring and responding. Ignoring creates distance and confusion. Responding creates alignment and clarity. And right now, you are being given the opportunity to move into that clarity. There is also something about urgency that sharpens focus. It removes distractions. It forces you to prioritize what truly matters. And that is what this warning is doing. It is cutting through everything unnecessary and bringing you face to face with what is essential. Your relationship with God, your spiritual condition, your readiness, these are not things that can be postponed indefinitely. They are not things that can be treated lightly. Because when the moment comes, these are the only things that will matter. Everything else will fade in importance. That is why this is not a casual message. It is not something to listen to and then move on from. It is something to respond to act on, to take seriously in a way that changes how you live moving forward. Because the reality is, moments like this do not come without purpose. They are not random. They are not accidental. They are intentional opportunities for change, for alignment, for preparation. And what you do with this moment will determine what happens next in your life. Not by chance, not by luck, but by choice. And that choice is being presented to you again, with clarity, with urgency, and with a weight that cannot be ignored. So now the moment has come where everything you have heard is no longer just words. It is a decision standing right in front of you. You cannot walk away from this unchanged and say you were not warned. You cannot pretend you did not feel the weight of it, the urgency of it, the truth of it pressing on your heart, because deep inside you know this is real. You know this is not just another message. This is a line being drawn, a moment of awakening, a call that demands a response. August 6th, 7th, and 8th are not just dates you will pass through. They are moments that will reveal where you stand. And when these days pass, you will either step forward with clarity, alignment, and readiness, or you will remain exactly where you are, carrying the weight of a warning you chose to ignore. But understand this, ignoring it will not stop what is coming. It will only leave you unprepared for it. God has spoken with mercy, not to push you away, but to pull you closer. Not to condemn you, but to correct you. Not to frighten you, but to awaken you before it is too late. And right now, in this very moment, you still have the opportunity to respond, to turn, to surrender, to realign your life with what truly matters. Do not let this be another message you hear and forget. Let it be the moment everything changed. Let it be the moment you stopped delaying, stopped compromising, and finally chose to stand fully in truth. Because there will come a time when the opportunity to respond will no longer be available in the same way it is right now. And when that time comes, what will matter is not what you heard, but what you did with it. This is your warning. This is your moment. And this is your choice.